Це 10 травня.
Today is May 10. Ukraine Media Center confirmed starts its operation. My name is Vasyl Samokhvalov, and we start our day with the book about the first real legal president of Ukraine, Mr. Leonid Kravchuk. Why are we studying it today? Because it's been a year since his death. There is a book issued, and there are people who were involved in the issue of these books invited here today. So our guests today are Taras Shevchenko, Deputy Minister of Culture and Information Policy of Ukraine for European Integration, Oleksandr Krasovytskyy, Director General of Folio Publishers, Maksym Maiorov, Center for Strategic Communication and Information Security, and Volodymyr Tylishchak, Deputy Head of the Ukrainian Institute of National Remembrance. So the logical question will be about the necessity for this book today. Thanks everybody, I appreciate the invitation. I apologize, I will probably have to leave shortly because there are hearings in the Committee for European Integration. My topic where I should be present, where I should have an address, but it's not my turn so far. So why have we gathered today? On this very day, a year ago, on the 10th of May, the first president of Ukraine, Leonid Kravchuk, has died, and for us as a ministry it was important to have during our annual bids, which are called the Books of National Unity, to have one publication issued in the memory of the first president of Ukraine, Leonid Kravchuk, to take care about the national remembrance, Ukrainian historical remembrance, building of the country. It has a lot of dimensions for us. It's about decolonization, it's about the memorable moments of history, or a new date, or the new day that we were celebrating starting from the last year, the Day of the State, and it's also about Leonid Kravchuk. This is why during our art bids we considered a number of applications and selected a project that was proposed by Folio Publishers, and we have the director of this publishing house here, and this book that you either already had an opportunity to hold in your heads or you can hold it now. It was issued at cost of Ukrainian budget, and I'm convinced that only one book or only one event is definitely not enough to convey the heritage left by the first president of Ukraine. And I think this small brick to build the Ukrainian state is useful. It's important, and I hope that my colleagues will also share their thoughts in this regard. Thank you very much. I think we will proceed to Mr. Oleksandr. Look, there is an ancient saying that you can say nothing bad about the deceased ones. However, the Center for Countering Misinformation may corroborate that nothing but truth. So Leonid Kravchuk was quite an ambiguous and non-average person. So how non-ambiguous is the book? Good afternoon everybody, my name is Oleksandr Krasovytskyy. I'm present here as two persons, as an author of the book and as a publisher too. So it just happened so that there are two texts in this book. One was issued earlier and it was presented earlier. Is the book by Leonid Kravchuk himself. He was assisted in writing by Volodymyr and the book was issued back in 2010, and it was presented during the Lviv Forum of the Publishers. Here it's a little bit cut, and another 100 pages are my conversations with Leonid Kravchuk that I recorded in year 2011. I was thinking back then that it would be a book about how Ukraine was gaining its independence, but then the events started unfolding related to the arrest of Yulia Tymoshenko and then arrest of Yuri Lutsenko, and Mr. Kravchuk didn't have a lot of time to work with the book, and those materials were waiting for the Minister of Culture and Information Policy to announce this bid, and I prepared this book quite quickly. I want to say that conversations with Leonid Kravchuk were not something like that. There is a monument, and the conversation with this monument is something very difficult that you have to get prepared to. It all started with something like the issue of the book that was published back in 2010 by another publishers. Upon his commission, he wrote the text, and then something wrong started because Yanukovych came in office. They started getting intimidated, and the first president was just refused. They never picked up a phone from him, and he was looking for a publisher to publish his book, and I agreed right away. So this presentation in Lviv, there was a huge number of people who wanted to take an autograph, and we had a dinner with Mr. Kravchuk, who said, "I never thought I would be remembered like this." He was just excluded from social life that year, and when we started our conversation, I've realized that it was a conversation with an average person, and we said in this book that his first place of work was in Chernivtsi, as he walked to his work through the yard of the Orthodox cathedral, and he was going in every once in a while, and he was tracked, and his directors back then, they told to him that it's real bad that you enter the cathedral, you shouldn't do so. And then in the summer of the year of independence, the year 1991, he was talking to Mikhail Gorbachev in Moscow, and he described how weird were those conversations when it was like a chess play, when you don't say your adversary about your plans, and you just try to find out the plans of your counterpart. And Mr. Gorbachev was pouring vodka in his cup, the lemon vodka, during the dry law in USSR, and he was asking Mr. Kravchuk what he was thinking about the new configuration, the unity of independent states, and still there is no book so far about what happened in Beloverskaya Pushcha. There is no author who would have written anything about that, and obviously this book does not contain all the truth and there is only one person left out of all the signatories of the document, Witold Fokin. All the rest had left us recently, and even the person who was the architect of this all, Gennady Burbulis, who died during an event in Azerbaijan under undisclosed circumstances. So Sherhi Shahrai, who is also still alive, who remained silent for all this time. So for what I understand, no one had seen any preparatory documents so far. So anyway, this book contains a lot of information, a lot of insider information about what was happening there, but not the whole truth anyway. But I hope that there will be avenues and streets named after Leonid Kravchuk all across Ukraine as a person who created our independent state. Well, it's logical if we start talking about the streets and avenues, what should be the memory, the heritage, how should we commemorate Mr. Kravchuk? Well, thank you. It's an honor. It's an honor to get involved in this conversation, just in case this is Mr. Volodymyr Tylishchak. Well, it's a special question in terms of commemoration, I really wouldn't like to have Mr. Kravchuk commemorated in a way limited only by monuments. The most important, or more important, is our knowledge and our understanding of every person as a historic personality, as a person, as a live person, as a human, because it's quite easy to bring it all down to the monument and to lose the live heritage, so to say. And this is why the issue of the book is probably even more important than construction of a monument, so that we know and so that we remember about the personality as a human with its thoughts, feelings, mistakes, because human is to err. There are no innocent ones, and we should be realizing, we should understand the mistakes too, the reasons for these or those decisions that were made, to avoid mistakes in our affairs, in what we do, to learn on the experience of our predecessors. And the best monument in this regard is a book about a person, a personality, the book which reflects the thoughts of that person. And the first monument to Leonid Kravchuk is probably this book that we are presenting today. Thank you very much. Please pass the microphone to Mr. Maksym Maiorov, this Center for Strategic Communication and Information Security. Well, about the security component of such projects, why are they important and why is the security important in this regard? Well, talking about security, when USSR was splitting up, there was a huge machine. It was a wonder for everything. Indoctrinated society, everything falls apart. Even bigger miracle was a peaceful disintegration of the Soviet Union, when everything was limited to local conflict and the 15 new countries emerged on the territory without big war. And one of those miracles, or both of those miracles, were something of which was a partial merit of Leonid Kravchuk, that USSR was disintegrated in this peaceful way. So talking about Mr. Kravchuk's presidency, it fell on difficult times. It fell on difficult times, I'm sorry. And you can compare Ukraine with other post-Soviet countries, and under conditions like that, aspirations to more independence was leading to conflict inevitably. This is something that happened in Moldova, something that happened in Caucasus. Saying goodbye to empire, it didn't pass real peaceful. But the aspirations to build your country, it transformed into dictatorship quite frequently. We know the examples of such dictatorships. Unfortunately, they still exist among those republics that emerged on the territory of Soviet Union. So one of the greatest merits of the first president of Ukraine, Leonid Kravchuk, was the fact that Ukraine, under all those conditions, preserved its independence. Independence and democracy. Leonid Kravchuk was not the first president. He was the president who lost his elections. He conceded peacefully to his successor. It was one of the first examples of the peaceful transition of power in post-Soviet space. And we already mentioned here that there are no innocent ones, specifically in the political area. If you talk about politicians, you can put some claims against anybody, and if Leonid Kravchuk would be nominated now, probably Ukrainians would not have voted him into the office, because there are new trends, new tendencies, and new tasks set in front of us. But we're not discussing the new presidential candidate. We're talking about the historic personality that has already passed. Could there something been done better than Kravchuk had done it? Well, obviously so, but it could be way worse in that situation. What we can do now is we can study this historic and political heritage of the first years of the presidency of Leonid Kravchuk, and the book that we're presenting today is the textbook for self-education. If we say that we have to learn from the past, this is exactly the book, I'm convinced, that will help us to do so. Thank you very much. One of the achievements of Kravchuk, apart from democracy, independence and peace, is also the freedom of speech. We have journalists on the floor here, and we may proceed to their questions. Thank you very much. Marina Shenkarenko, Ukrinform. The publishing of this book was financed under the bid of national unity. So what are other books that should emerge under that bid this year, and what were the criteria that you were picking the winners by? Thank you. I will probably answer these questions. Those are the results of the last year winners, the year 2022, and I'm reminding you that during this contest there are still presentations, or within the framework of this contest, there are still presentations going on. For example, the book The Iron Resilience, it's about the Ukrzaliznytsia, the Ukrainian railway, how it was happening on the railway stations in different cities. There are still presentations going on of the book devoted to Skovoroda. There were numerous presentations all across Ukraine in different cities. There were 2 books published about Skovoroda, so those are the biggest ones in terms of presentations. Just last week, floor above, on the 3rd of May, on the International Day of Freedom of Speech, we were talking about, and we were distributing the book Journalists in the War, that was also published within the framework of this contest. So those are the most popular, the biggest presentations that you may remember. Well, I have a question about the book itself and the distribution. What is the issue? Where can it be bought? To what extent will the libraries be involved? Do we expect any translation? If so, to which languages, where it will go? We would like to find out more details about this book specifically. Well, it's the question to me. The issue will be 1,000 copies. There was a commercial issue of 500 more copies. So far, you can buy it from the website of the publishing house or in the bookstores Knigarnia Ye, Yekabu, and so on. But the issue, we're running out of issue. We will probably make another issue. It will be a little bit different with more additional materials. I'm not sure about the translations so far. There were no foreign publishers addressing us with this regard, and on top of that, I want to say that our market is slow. Maybe in 3 or 4 years this will happen, so but the event should be over, and only after that there will be a lot of translations from Ukrainian in the West. And about the translations within the framework of this program, probably it's a question to Mr. Taras. When the new contest will be announced, it may be implemented, because there is such an option contemplated by the program, and part of the books that were issued by Folio last year, for example, Chronicles of War and Battle for Kharkiv, they were issued in English language too. Yeah, it would be quite good. A little bit more details. The issue that was published at cost of Ukrainian budget is prohibited for sale, you cannot actually buy it. You can only buy one out of those 500 additional issue. So you can only get it for presentation purposes. They are also not planned to be handed over to the libraries because there's another program in place in the institute, in the Ukrainian Institute of the Book. So there are certain rules in the state when those programs cannot overlap. It may look illogical how come the book is published but the libraries cannot get it, but there is another specific program to replenish the library funds, and Ukrainian Institute of the Book last year, I think due to the war, their operations were suspended, but this year some funds, and the minister addresses the international donors to support the Ukrainian Institute of the Book. So this year we plan to issue some books there. Do we have any more questions, please? Good afternoon, Karina Vakareva, TSN 1+1. I have a question to Mr. Taras. You said that we can ask the ministry for popularization of these issues. So who can ask and what is the procedure generally? It's 1,000 of the books. If you mention it on TSN, probably we will run out of them on the very next day, but generally these books are on the balance of the state enterprise, which submits to the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy. So this state enterprise, it has the books, and the general practice is that other government authorities, they address us with this question. So the purpose should be the popularization, the maximum use, to make sure those books end up in the right hands. And another significant part of what is issued by the ministry is also handed over to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to be distributed among the representative offices of other countries here. So there's the charitable funds, civil organizations. If the book is devoted to the city, for example, to Kharkiv, Chernihiv, obviously it's also the municipal authority who are interested in disseminating the information about their city. Well, I can confirm it. We submit official letters to the ministry, and we have a desk over there where we distribute different kinds of literature, mostly in foreign languages, because we have a lot of international journalists, foreign journalists. Well, and my question is, how did the family of Mr. Kravchuk react to this book? Did you have an opportunity to talk to them? Well, I don't have any contacts with them, unfortunately. More questions. Roman Kukharuk, Information Agency Nation. I have a question to Mr. Shevchenko. Back in year 96, Ukrainian constitution was adopted during the rule of President Kuchma, but there is a requirement. One of the articles requires the state, the government, the presidents to adopt the constitutional law on the cultural heritage. Maybe your ministry is preparing this draft law, and probably it will be submitted to the parliament, and maybe parliament will adopt that law someday. And another question: within the 30 years of Ukrainian independence, no single paper factory was built in Ukraine. Maybe in the program of reconstruction, of post-war reconstruction, there is such thing planned as the paper factory, which would provide Ukrainian publishers with high quality papers, so we don't buy it elsewhere abroad. Thank you for this question. Both questions are quite interested. Well, regarding the first question, I'm not responsible for the heritage actually, but I know that just recently the ministry initiated the draft law where the national heritage is considered to be the matter of national security to improve its status. I'm responsible more for decolonization matters. We try to overcome the consequences of decolonization and Russification, but I cannot answer your question quite professional because my subject is mass media, information security, and European integration. The second question, the paper factory which would make paper both for magazines and newspapers, well, for the time being there are no such plans. It's a huge problem, and right by my side is Mr. Krasovytskyy, who may add more. Look, on one hand, yes, is the matter of statewide weight, but if you mean whether it could be stimulating of private business or it should be a government-controlled enterprise, well, I want to say a little bit about the paper. In last year and year before, there was a crisis in Europe due to the amount of paper, but still the publishers kept working. The price of paper grew almost twice, but no one stopped the issue of the books. And starting from the March last year, Folio continues operating. We were suspended only for 1 month. It's a very high energy consuming enterprise. This industry cannot use the secondary raw material, and Ukrainian forests, they do not fit for manufacturing of the paper. It's very unpleasant in terms of ecology, and we have to continue buying paper from Indonesia or Finland, for example, and it's not the most urgent matter in Ukraine. I think that as soon as we become a part of European Union, the paper from European market will be coming to Ukraine quite normally. We don't need either Russian manufacturers of the paper like Andopoha, or else we just have to understand that there is no such industry in Ukraine anymore. No single publishing house works in a way that they used to be during Soviet Union. This type of activity will subside gradually. There is still culture preserved in different the culture of newspapers written preserved in different countries of Europe, like Britain or Italy, but in many countries those industries, they just phase out. This industry is quite branched by manufacturers, and for example my publisher's house only works with the paper from 12 different manufacturers from Europe and other continents, and I don't think that we should address the government with the proposition to manufacture paper. Offset paper is being manufactured in Ukraine, but it's not of the best quality because it's a very complicated, up-to-date type of industry, type of manufacturing capacities. Well, thank you for this comprehensive answer. You can take the autograph from the author, and now we will be wrapping up. Our next briefing is at 13:30. We will be talking about the land market. See you shortly.